And I think your most recent story sort of interweaves and goes into some DEI conversation. Is that correct, Caitlyn?
Yes, it does. My most recent story is about the Fugitive Slave Acts, how they led to our modern police departments, and the parallels to the present-day mass deportation raids. Because the Fugitive Slave Acts took away due process, just like the mass deportation raids. They've taken away due process from people who are immigrants. They haven't let lawyers into the process to advocate for people. They've blocked people out of the process of learning things. They're able to go into properties, private properties and all of these places. And when I say private properties, I also mean like churches, other places. They're persecuting sanctuary cities, which parallels to like people that were trying to fight back against fugitive against the Fugitive Slave Acts. So there's a lot of parallels between history, and it's actually scary to think about.
Well, if people want to access that information.
And actually, Caitlyn, you made me. Hey there.
Go ahead, Barbara. Go ahead.
Yes, you made me think about when you're talking about those parallels. One thing that's happening is as they're doing these mass deportations around the country, and everybody, by the way, it's not just quote criminals they're arresting. They're arresting everybody. And remember one thing they said, because of all the misarresting they've been doing, all the wrong people they've been holding, all the wrong people they've been stopping, their response was, well, you need to carry your proof of citizenship with you at all times. Not just your driver's license, but your passport, your other proof of citizenship. I mean, that definitely goes back to the to the 1800s and the American slavery eras, doesn't it not, Dr. Whitehead?
It absolutely does. I think that we should be pausing for a moment, Barbara, so that people will understand how significant this inflection moment is that we have reached. This is a very critical time, and I think that we are so focused sometimes on the rhetoric coming from the White House that we are overlooking the actual policies that are being implemented, the wave of fear that is sweeping throughout the country, and the way in which there was this coup that took place over the weekend. I think that we're focused on the craziness, which is what Trump 1.0 was. Like we ran and we moved through the media where everything he said, we were up in arms while overlooking the things that were being done. Elon Musk and his Gen Z goon squad getting into the State Department, having America's checkbook through the Treasury Department, that is a major moment that we have to think about. What does that mean to have an unelected person who is sitting at the center of all of our financial knowledge? Two, thinking about the fact that now they're telling people that we can pick up anyone that we think might be here who's undocumented. They're saying that the number of people that are coming from Ghana who are undocumented, Nigeria who are undocumented. So I'm saying you're talking about black folks as well. You walk up to me, you don't know that I was born in South Carolina, so now I have to produce my papers because you might think I'm from somewhere else. That is a wave of fear. That's a fear tactic used when you're trying to build a fascist nation. And the third piece is thinking about the ways in which people feel that they are powerless. I have been reading, I think everybody has, looking at Timothy Snyder's small pamphlet on tyranny, and I really do believe in two things he said. One, do not obey in advance. And I'm telling people that more than any other time, you need to think about what it means to live in a democracy and be willing to fight for the democracy to stand. And then two, to pick an institution that you believe in and you defend it, not just with your thoughts and prayers, but with your money. Do you believe in democracy? Do you believe in asylum? Do you believe in the work that Barbara's doing? Do you believe in the NAACP? Pick your institution and defend it, because institutions fight for us at this moment. One individual holding some placard outside the White House is not the same thing as having an institution that can do the policy work, put in the lawsuits, and make the stands when you have to go to work and buy eggs. Institutions have to step in and fight for us.
And Amen. When you talk about anticipatory obedience, could you explain to our audience what anticipatory obedience is?
Yes, this is the idea that this is what is happening with the White House. You listen to the news and you feel helpless. You feel frustrated and you feel you can't do anything about it except go along and wait until the next election. It's a way where you are overwhelming people using Sun Tzu's The Art of War, where you're destabilizing your enemy by giving your enemy so many things happening against them. You overwhelm them and you make them believe that they can't fight one thing because it's a multiple number of things that are approaching them. That is how people are feeling now. They're throwing up their hands and saying there's nothing we can do. So by doing nothing, you are obeying in advance because you believe that you are powerless, you believe that you are helpless, and you believe the situation is hopeless. That's how they win. And I'm telling people that you have to also use Sun Tzu's The Art of War for your impact. Like Sun Tzu also says, when your enemy is trying to destabilize you, you cut through the noise to focus in on what the most important thing is, and you say that's the thing that we cannot lose. And the most important thing is, I think, is what Musk and his goon squad did this weekend. I'm like, that's the piece that we can zero in on.
Amen. You know, so many people always are walking around looking at all of us talking about what they would have done if they had been in Hitler's Germany and how they would have spoken out. They would have stood up. They would have done this or that. But, folks, what you're watching when you're seeing people go along to get along because they have fear, they don't want to be primary, so they're putting forth, approving nominees who they know are dangerous to our nation's health, to our nation's future. When you see that, that's what happened in Nazi Germany. That's how we ended up with, a genocide of unknown proportions, other than the, attack here in the U.S., bringing Africans in through the Atlantic slave trade. Folks, we need to absolutely, and the genocide, of course, against Native Americans. We need to absolutely be looking at all these issues. Caitlyn, tell people how they can access this series, how they can every day, because you know what I do, Kate, Dr. Whitehead, what I do, Ernie, what I do, Daryl, what I do, Caitlyn, is I stand in the path, I stand in the footsteps of a Harriet Tubman. I lift up these historical people who I don't even know, these new names that I learn about when I'm reading these amazing stories. Black history is not just about history. It's about the inspiration to live in this moment correctly, to live in this moment, to fight for our people in the best way we can by knowing the examples of the people who have successfully done it in the past. So tell us, Caitlyn, how do people get into this series?
People can access the series at votingrightsalliance.org. The series is a daily series. Transformative Justice Coalition's Voting Rights Alliance does this annually, and this year, actually, this series is focused on how we can really practice Black history, what we can learn about our ancestors that faced even greater odds, and we can win. Like, our ancestors did it, and we will too, because often the sentiment is those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So when they try to ban books, they're trying to make us repeat history. And so the way we counter that is by learning our history, our beautiful, strong, resilient Black history. So a whole tone of this series, even though it's talking about these serious and heartbreaking topics, is that, like, hey, but this is how they protested, they organized, they fundraised, they did all of these things in the past, and they moved the needle in much, much worse circumstances. And so we will too. And it provides a blueprint for us. So again, they can go to votingrightsalliance.org to access the entire series, because it's a calendar, it's a newsletter, it's social media posts, it has a unique image every day. So it's a really great series.
That's awesome. And every day there's a new story, everyone. Every day there's a new figure that you never heard of being lifted up, and a story that you never knew. There's so many amazing stories out there that are unknown. That's why Asala is so beautiful. I love, that organization with my heart. I want to ask you, Ernie, as a professor, you're on the front line also like Dr. Whitehead, teaching our young people. What is it that you want people to hold in their heart this Black History Month in 2025?
I think, thank you for that, Barbara, and thank you, Caitlyn. For me, I think the thing that people have to understand is that history makes the present make sense. And it's more, like you said, it's more than just knowing names. You've got to know the substantive history behind movements. Because as we've said so many times on this show before, most people's knowledge and understanding of our struggle has been framed with Frederick Douglass, with MLK, and with other Black men. That is not what our struggle has been about. That is not even the majority of the people who've coordinated and masterminded our struggle. It has been Black women. And unless you know that history, you're going to be blind to being able to create the genius in your thinking to work against the forces that we're currently dealing with. And the last thing is Black history and Black freedom and Black love is what this is all about. Those things engender the ability to combat, to get out of that space that Dr. Kaye's talking about, to be able to formalize and strategize against what is happening now. Because it is that Black love which is the essence of the pushback against Black history. It creates that sense of understanding, the spirit, the energy, and the struggle within Black and white people. And that is what this current administration wants to crush and suppress.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just incredible. And, Barbara, if I may, I wanted to touch back on this mass deportation and as it interrelates with everything that's gone on. Yeah. Professor Quarles and Professor Whitehead, Dr. Whitehead, recently at Temple University in Philadelphia, there were 3 college students that decided that they were going to act like they were part of ICE, the U.S. International Customs and Enforcement, and they had on the uniform, they had on the garb and everything, and they were going through the residence halls, and,
my Lord,
trying to gain access to intimidate those students that were there. Do you think that this is something that it's just the learned behavior that's coming from the top, that's coming from the administration? I mean, are we going to see more of this? Is it going to be more poison that's going to be spewing into our streets and into our schools like this?
I would like to I'll jump in if Professor Quarles is able to let me go first, because I think that we should kind of maybe separate it out. As the parent of college sons, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, are you even aware of what's happening in the world? Sometimes I do things. I'm like, have you thought this through? Like, do you really think this is funny? This is where you need adults to be able to step in. Those college students, who, by the way, have been arrested because the cops did not find this funny. They do see it as a crime with them posing as phony federal agents, that doing this and thinking that it is a joke means either A, they are unaware of the seriousness of the issues that are happening in this country, or B, they're being egged on. They think that this is a way that they can make themselves known on campus. Should students be held accountable? Absolutely. The students that were held accountable, that were involved in protesting and saying that this country needs to hold true to being able to protect people what's happening in Gaza, they were held accountable. So I'm saying if students who are looking to do the right thing were held accountable, then these students who are out here acting as phony ICE agents, invoking fear on campus, should be held accountable. Is it coming from the White House? Well, I mean, that's a yes and, right? Is the president out here posing as a phony ICE agent? No. But do people feel that they have the freedom to do whatever they want with no consequences? Yes. And that's where the concern is, because we are under the administration of someone who says whatever they're feeling, where there are no consequences, who's pushing the boundaries, who is remaking the government, and no one is actively stopping him. I know lawsuits are being filed. I know there are protests been happening with, Senator Van Hollen is my senator as well, that I know people are standing up. But as far as the young people, they're watching someone able to do whatever they want without any guardrails. And therein lies the danger. And that's why we have to stand up, because what message are we sending to the young people about what the appropriate behavior is for responsible citizenship?
And that's why it's so important, Dr. Kaye, to see all the protests that have broken out in the last couple of days. I was amazed. I mean, they took over a highway here in Georgia in protest. Los Angeles, these, and I've been looking, the ages are, quite diverse, but it's mostly young people. Right here